Exposed: How I went from being humiliated at 100 guests to an unexpected hero on stage. In that moment, Sarah's world tilted, as if she stood on a tightrope, swaying dangerously. The microphone crackled and shut down just as she was about to pour her heart out, transforming her from a nurse with a message to a woman silenced on the brink of a room full of eager faces. A hush fell over the crowd, and Sarah could feel the weight of judgment pressing against her chest like a lead weight. Her sister's wedding should have been a joyous occasion, but now, the eyes of nearly 100 people bore down on her with a mix of sympathy and embarrassment. Was she really about to crumble in public? How quickly her dreams of inspiring others evaporated, swallowed by shame and insecurity. Doubt gnawed at her insides as she replayed her life like a twisted film. The steady hand of a nurse didn't translate to the spotlight's glare, a place she had long envisioned but never truly embraced. Every time she thought of speaking in public, anxiety clawed at her mind, whispering that she was not worthy, not enough. Was this her reality? A constant loop of hesitation and missed opportunities? Each second in silence felt like an eternity, fueling the fire of her insecurities. Could she confront the judgment that radiated from that crowd? The moments dragged on, and each face blurred into a collective disappointment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days later, Sarah returned to her family's home, retreating into an ache of despair. The walls felt familiar but suffocating. What had she been thinking? Her journal, full of scribbles and dreams, now lay closed, a testament to her failure. She wrestled with her insecurities, questioning everything she had ever hoped to be. Her grandmother, with eyes that danced with warmth, shared her own stories of mishaps on stage, moments that had once seemed colossal, yet they had forged resilience. "You have the gift, dear," her grandmother insisted. "It runs in our family." But Sarah felt like an imposter in that legacy. She had long ignored the echoes of her potential. As the wedding approached, the stakes grew higher. The audience was not just family. They were her bosses and colleagues. The familiar weight of her colleagues' whispers lingered, sowing seeds of doubt that threatened to take root. What if they laughed? What if they judged? Anxiety ballooned in her chest, inflating with every passing moment until it felt like the space around her collapsed inwards. Standing backstage once more, the room buzzed with excitement while disbelief rattled her nerves. Would she rise like the hero she dreamed of being, or shrink back into the shadows forever? The spotlight beckoned, illuminating her path but casting long, frightening shadows. Heart racing, she took a breath, feeling that one moment would define her future. Would she find her voice, or would fear swallow her into silence? The room pulsed with energy, a stark contrast to the turmoil within Sarah. Despite the jitter of her heart, she steeled herself against the tide of anxiety, recalling her grandmother's words like a mantra repeating in her mind. "You have the gift." An ember of her past self, the one who dared to dream, flickered within her, a spirit she desperately needed to locate. With every breath, she leaned into the present, feeling the invisible threads connect her to the audience, friends, family, and colleagues who truly wanted her to succeed. The fear began to shift, morphing into something almost tangible, a palpable challenge rather than an impenetrable wall. She let her gaze drift across the crowd, capturing fleeting expressions of encouragement that gradually warmed her spirit. In their eyes, she didn't see judgment. She saw hope, longing for her to share her story, a gift she had underestimated. Then came the defining moment. As the elapsed seconds morphed into an eternity, Sarah took a step forward, aligning her feet with her heart. The stage glowed under the harsh glare of lights, ready to spotlight not who's standing but what she was ready to say. She reached for the microphone, feeling its coldness, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of uncertainty. The moment hung suspended before her, an opportunity to transform the pain of her past into the strength of her future. "Let me tell you about a journey," she began, her voice trembling with uncertainty, but gaining strength with each word. "Each of us carries burdens, things that weigh us down. Mine became sharply pronounced in a moment when I felt exposed and humiliated." She recounted the events of the wedding, How she had stood on that precipice, mouth dry, heart racing, and the deafening silence that followed the microphone's failure. A portion of her raw vulnerability slipped free, echoing in the quiet room. She was not just recounting a story, but connecting. As she spoke, she looked for signs. Were they engaged? Was there empathy? With every laugh shared, every tear shed in response to her sincerity, Sarah felt her confidence swell. And in this moment of visible connection, she discovered the fire within her, a determination forged from years of silent struggle. The audience was with her, each laugh echoing a resonant respect for her bravery, and it rekindled her spirit against the ashes of doubt. Midway through her narrative, she paused, allowing their expressions to wash over her. This was not just her story. This was a shared human experience, a tapestry woven with the threads of vulnerability and strength. As she wrapped up her tale, she recognized her growth. She was no longer the intimidated nurse on stage, but a woman reclaiming her narrative. Yet, as applause erupted around her, she sensed more than victory. There was unfinished business, an unearthed insight bubbling beneath the surface. How much more lay untold? Within herself and among her peers, what other hidden layers longed to break free? Excitement mingled with anticipation, igniting something inside of her. With the rush of adrenaline still coursing through her veins, Sarah understood that this experience was merely the beginning. She had risen above her fears, but now, the challenge was to cultivate this fire, explore the depths of her potential further, and face the unknown repercussions of her newfound voice. The time had come to spearhead her evolution, and she was ready to confront what awaited just beyond the horizon. What was waiting on that horizon? And would she have the courage to pursue it? The applause crashed around Sarah like an unexpected wave, filling her with exhilaration mixed with trepidation. As she stepped off the stage, her heart still thrummed with the remnants of adrenaline and triumph. She had shared her experience. She had declared herself to the world. Yet doubt began to gather swiftly, stealthily injecting itself into her mind. What lay ahead? What were the implications of this newly discovered voice? As she navigated through the crowd, the faces that had once seemed so daunting now illuminated with admiration. They greeted her with smiles and words of encouragement, yet their genuine appreciation became a double-edged sword. Could she live up to their expectations? Would she falter again, or was she simply concocting scenarios in her mind? She brushed past the lingering uncertainty, seeking refuge in the quiet space of her thoughts. Returning to her apartment that night, she sank onto the couch, the residual cheers echoing but gradually fading into a comfortable silence. Alone now, she allowed herself to reflect. This was a pivotal moment, a threshold at which she could either retreat into the shadows of her past insecurities or pursue a path of newfound courage and ambition. It was so undeniably clear. She was hungry for more growth, more connection, more exploration. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the stillness. A text from her friend Rachel illuminated the screen. "You were incredible tonight. Don't let this be a one-time thing. You need to share that gift more." A wave of warmth surged through her, but alongside it came the realization of Rachel's expectations. Could she indeed embrace a larger audience, convert this spark into something sustainable? The very thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. In the days that followed, Sarah invested her time in crafting new narratives. She began journaling, channeling her thoughts into written words that flowed straight from her heart. Each entry became a new thread, a step forward on the tapestry she was weaving. Excerpts of her experiences emerged, moments of despair, triumphs over adversity. The act of articulating her journey unfurled layers long buried, tapping into emotions that had quietly influenced her professional life all along. Yet with every word, the uncertainty nibbled at her resolve. Would anyone care about her story beyond this intimate circle? Would vulnerability make her stronger or expose her to further disappointment? Each time she wrestled with these questions, she confronted an inner antagonist, fear masquerading as helpful caution. One evening, after yet another round of introspection, she made a decision. Sarah would seek out opportunities to share her story, to amplify not only her voice, but the lessons embedded in her journey. She envisioned workshops, online forums, the possibility of a platform where she could offer solace to those wrestling with their self-doubt. Adventure beckoned her, swaying her spirit like fire, gently igniting parched kindling. But could she confront the challenges that were bound to arise? The first step was not far from her reach, yet her heart quaked at the prospect of presenting herself again, this time with the mantle of expectation laid firmly on her shoulders. Regardless, Sarah began reaching out, researching local organizations that welcomed personal development speakers. She crafted proposals, detailing how sharing her journey could illuminate paths for others. Each submission punctuated her conviction, reminding her that she was no longer encased in fear, but enveloped by possibility. As she hit send on her latest outreach, exhilaration surged, but so did anxiety. What if they rejected her? What if her story didn't resonate? In that charged moment of uncertainty, she caught a glimpse of the horizon she was shaping, one radiant with potential. What awaited on that path? Would the next step bring affirmation, or would she confront opposition that would test her resilience more than ever? The cacophony of uncertainties loomed large, but her determination pulsed in tandem, ready to meet whatever challenge rushed forward. The following week felt like an endless cycle of anticipation and dread. Sarah's inbox buzzed with notifications, each one a potential validation or rejection. Days blurred, the colors of her apartment dulled against the rhythm of her thoughts. Time seemed to trickle, every hour stretched into an eternity as she awaited responses from her outreach. The weight of expectation wasn't just an external force. It mingled with the creeping muscles of doubt that pulsated under her skin, always reminding her of the stage she had once stumbled upon. She occupied herself with small tasks, washing dishes, arranging books, mindlessly scrolling through social media. Each distraction only amplified her distress as she witnessed others effortlessly sharing their successes, their stories landing with grace and purpose. Had she made a foolish choice? Did her voice, her narrative, really matter? In moments of solitude, she returned to her journal, her sanctuary, where raw honesty poured onto the pages. "What are you truly afraid of?" she wrote, the question resting like a stone in her chest. Bits of unfiltered resentment towards herself bubbled up, the fear of inadequacy twisted with the longing for connection. She was standing on the brink of something transformative, yet the shadows of self-doubt loomed larger. Pushing those thoughts aside, she made a conscious effort each day, forcing herself to sit at her desk and devote time to her narrative. A bold idea unfolded in her mind, a blog. It would be an intimate digital space where she shared her journey one piece at a time, a canvas for her vulnerabilities, fears, triumphs, and wisdom. This seemed like a manageable step. Trembling but resolute, she began sketching out her first post. Finding My Voice, The Journey from Fear to Authenticity. The title captured her essence, an emblem of her newfound commitment to self-exploration. As she typed, the words flowed like a river, a clarity washing over her as she articulated the tangled threads of her experience. Mid-sentence, her phone buzzed, a new email from one of the organizations she had contacted. Her heart dropped momentarily, a fierce ambivalence washing over her as she braced herself. Each click opened a gate to either victory or disappointment. With bated breath, she clicked the notification. The panel interested in her story wanted to schedule a call. A lump formed in her throat. This was not rejection. They sought conversation, an invitation to explore her narrative further. Joy surged through her veins, tinged with the adrenaline of being in the spotlight once again. But it wasn't just excitement. It was an undercurrent of fear that subsisted, whispering reminders of her earlier stumbles. With an impending conversation hanging in the air, Sarah prepared meticulously. She drafted bullet points, rehearsed her delivery, paced around her apartment, channeling every anxious moment into an empowering performance. Yet the day before the call, an unsettling unease gripped her. What if they didn't see the value in her words? What if it all came crashing down again? Just when self-doubt threatened to pull her under, clarity broke through the storm of worries. She would enter this meeting with one mantra: authenticity. Her past missteps had shaped her into the storyteller she was today. If they rejected her, it wouldn't determine her worth. She was not merely aiming to impress. She was there to share her reality. As she sat at her desk, waiting for the call to connect, anticipation woven into her resolve, she felt her heartbeat echo the rhythm of her intent. In this moment, she knew she was grappling with something much deeper than just a single opportunity. This was an insight into her own capacity for resilience. Then the call connected, and she inhaled deeply, bracing herself for the exchange that awaited. What would they ask? How would she respond? The moment she had been chasing was now here. Did she truly possess the strength to embrace this unfolding narrative, or would hidden fears rise to the surface once more? With each heartbeat, Sarah sensed a new chapter was about to begin. Sarah steadied herself as she heard the soft ping of the incoming call. The familiar voice of the interviewer filled the space around her, cutting through the silence with a warmth that momentarily eased her jitters. "Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today." "Thank you for having me," Sarah replied, her voice slightly shaky but resolute. The initial small talk danced in the background, but she felt the weight of the conversation draw closer as she prepared to discuss her story. The interviewer led her through a series of questions, the kind that felt almost like an invitation into her world. "Can you share a bit about what inspired you to reach out to us?" Each response came with probing self-reflection. As she articulated the challenges she faced, the stumbling on stage that haunted her sleep, the overwhelming social media pressure that churned in her gut, she noticed how each word severed the chains of anxiety binding her. She realized that this moment wasn't just about showcasing her journey, it was about reclaiming it. The conversation shifted to her blog, the vulnerable internet space where she began to chronicle her thoughts. Finding My Voice was no longer just a title, it became a mantra. She found herself discussing how writing had become her lifeline, her way of wrestling with her fears. As she spoke, she noticed the soft nods of the interviewer on the screen, a signal that her words were resonating. Nervousness ebbed away, replaced by a flicker of confidence. "Have you faced any unexpected challenges while sharing your story?" Sarah took a breath and leaned in closer, unearthing an episode that felt raw yet pivotal. She recounted a recent comment on her blog, one that threw her into a spiral of doubt. "It stung," she admitted, "to receive feedback suggesting that my experiences weren't valid. It made me question everything I had shared." Yet, amid the weight of that moment, she found strength in her resolve, a genesis of self-awareness. "Instead of retreating, I chose to confront that insecurity. I realized my voice was worth articulating, regardless of criticism." Every revelation sparked something within her, a flicker of recognition that she was edging closer to the core of her purpose. Just as each question drew her deeper, another bench laid itself out before her, crafted by her own experience. It was a transformation unfolding in real time, elevated by the act of sharing and validating her own feelings. "And how has this affected your personal growth?" The question hung in the air, and as Sarah considered her answer, she took a moment to see how far she had come. "It's taught me resilience, but more importantly, empathy. I can now connect with others who experience similar struggles." More than the nerves or the fear her past brought, there blossomed a sense of kinship that she longed to provide for others still searching for their own path. The conversation lingered on, weaving through her aspirations and her newfound dedication to authenticity. Yet, in the back of her mind, a question simmered. What if they loved her story but felt it was too raw to share? What if they wanted polished narratives that aligned with ideal expectations? As the interview concluded with warm farewells and expressions of appreciation, Sarah felt that same familiar twist of uncertainty churn in her gut. Had she stripped herself of too much vulnerability, or had she embraced the right amount of honesty? The call had been a step forward, but it flirted with jagged edges, new possibilities entwined with fears yet to be confronted. Her blog had begun to unfold into something larger, and now she stood on the brink of potentially public exposure. What awaited her beyond this conversation? As she shut her laptop, she couldn't shake the sensation that other doors were poised to open. Perhaps the next step beckoned her to reveal even more of herself. In doing so, would she finally confront the specter of her past failures head-on? With a heart beating heavy with anticipation, she wondered, was it possible that this was merely the prelude to an unexpected illumination of her truth? The reflection in the darkened screen stared back at Sarah, the remnants of her interview echoing in her mind like a symphony. She had shared pieces of her soul, shedding layers that she thought were integral to her identity. Was she truly ready for the vulnerability that lay ahead, or had she merely dipped her toes into an unfathomable ocean? The next morning, a whirlwind of anxiety and excitement clawed at her as she forced herself to revisit the blog that had become her sanctuary. With each click, she navigated through her past entries, the words vibrating with memories she had penned in solitude. Each post had been a step taken in a fog of uncertainty, yet now they felt like milestones marking her journey toward authenticity. She decided to craft a new post, one that would serve as a bridge between the Sarah who fled from her truth and the woman she was shaping herself to be. The title came to her swiftly, Unveiling My Unfiltered Self, Embracing the Unknown. It felt liberating, yet daunting as she mulled over all the personal facets she long avoided. Fear coiled tightly around her chest, squeezing just enough to remind her of the stakes. With her hands poised over the keyboard, she let the words flow, recounting the clumsy moments that led her to tremble under the judgment of 100 unfamiliar faces. "I was paralyzed by what others might think," she typed. The ghosts of her past failures whispered in her ear, yet she continued, refusing to retreat into silence this time. "But what I didn't know about myself was that vulnerability can transmute into strength." As the clock swept toward lunch, she reflected on the courage it took to bear her once monumental fears. The act of writing became a fierce confrontation, a challenge to herself to expose her unpolished truths. Each keystroke gripped her heart, igniting a fire that coursed through her veins. She envisioned the potential backlash, but held tight to the belief that raw honesty would resonate with her readers. Just as she prepared to wrap up her thoughts, a small notification popped up, new comments on her earlier posts. With a gulp, she clicked through them. Most comments offered encouragement and understanding, threads of connection laced through shared experiences. Then, one comment dropped like a stone into the stillness of her burgeoning confidence. "You really should learn to get over it. Everyone stumbles sometimes. No one wants to read about your sob stories." Sarah's chest tightened with the sting of that cold judgment. The very darkness she had aimed to rise above now loomed over her like an ominous cloud. For a moment, she hung on to doubt, questioning whether her voice had any place in the dialogue she had hoped to create. But she also felt a burgeoning fire, a momentary urge to respond, to push back against the enmity she had once let consume her. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard once again, hesitant but thrumming with resolve. Would she hide behind polite words and apologetic tones, or would she engage with the courage she meant to embody? A debate raged within her, representing her pivotal moment. To confront or to withdraw. This felt deeper than just words on a side of the screen. It was her identity at stake. Eventually, she closed her eyes, drew a deep inhale, and gradually typed back. "We all have our battles. Mine included fear, but every struggle is part of our journey. I share mine to connect, not to please. I hope you understand." With a firm press of the Enter key, Sarah submitted her response. As she stepped back to assess her reactions, the realization surfaced. Each moment of hesitation became a part of her evolution. This confrontation marked a critical juncture in her journey. She wasn't just revealing herself, she was staking her claim in her truth. Her pulse quickened with a sense of potential that was intoxicating. Just as she felt the weight lift, another thought struck her. What if this was not merely about confronting commenters, but an ultimate test of her new platform's intentions? Were her truths worth exposing on a larger stage? And what consequences could emerge? With this new thread weaving into her narrative, Sarah's heart raced at the thought of the next step. The path ahead felt treacherous yet exhilarating. Was she ready to showcase not just her story, but also to call out the shadows that threatened to overshadow her growth? The stakes had risen, and she stood at the precipice of self-discovery, ready to confront the audience awaiting her next move. Would she embrace the stage and step into the light? The question lingered, heavy yet liberating. The following day dawned with a crispness that vibrated through Sarah, spurring her into action. She awoke with a palpable tension still echoing from her published response. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the shadows in her mind, the doubts that still lingered despite her moment of defiance. Determined to harness the momentum she had created, Sarah reached for her laptop as soon as her feet hit the ground. She began to draft the next entry for her blog, a piece she felt compelled to write. What if her journey could transcend mere introspection? What if her words could serve as a roadmap for others grappling with their insecurities? Titled, "From Silence to Stage, Rising as My Own Advocate," she sought to paint a clearer picture of her evolution. Sarah detailed the deep-seated fears that had silenced her in various aspects of her life for far too long. "Fear and shame have been my constant companions," she typed, recalling both triumphs and failures with a raw vulnerability that further captured her essence. The act of revealing her narrative compelled her to explore pivotal moments, the times she shrank into the shadows during job interviews or social gatherings, overwhelmed by anxiety and judgment. Yet she made a conscious decision not to dwell solely in misery. "But today, I choose to step forward, no matter how shaky this step may be," she wrote, optimism blossoming along with her words. As the entry took shape, Sarah found herself reflecting on the moment she finally stood up to the anonymous critic online. She recognized it wasn't merely about combating negativity. It was pivotal in reconstructing her relationship with herself. The connection between her blog and her transformed perspective was dawning. This wasn't just about self-expression, but self-advocacy. Sometimes the loudest voice we need to hear is our own, she mused, the revelation striking a resonant chord within her. With each paragraph, she fueled her determination, sketching an image not only of her internal battles, but also, importantly, of her burgeoning growth as she began to fully accept herself. The image of an unsteady yet hopeful warrior took form, a woman who was committed to rising above the fray, acknowledging her scars while allowing them to shape her into something stronger than before. When Sarah finally published her new post, a rush of exhilaration coursed through her veins. Followers began to react almost immediately, offering affirmations, and more importantly, stories of resilience that mirrored her own. These connections fused a modern camaraderie among them, each click and response deepening her resolve. Then came another comment, breaking the streams of positivity like a stone in water. Yet here you are again, clinging to the past. How many sob stories can one person tell before it's just whining? For a brief moment, indignation surged within her. She teetered on the edge of disappointment. Yet instead of retreating beneath the weight of that cold judgment, another realization struck. She had the power to shape this narrative. This was her chance to confront the naysayer not just for herself, but for everyone battling similar criticisms. Her fingers danced over the keyboard. "Growth is a process," she typed resolutely. "It's okay if the journey is messy. It's okay if it takes time. I share my truth not to dwell in the past, but to inspire the present." Pressing enter felt monumental. The validation of her struggle flowed back to her, igniting a fervent confidence that sent waves through her psyche. Each word she forged into the digital world was a stepping stone across the anxieties that had plagued her for so long. The act of engagement felt like a defense, a shield against the negativity that had once silenced her. As she reflected, the thought crystallized. Her path wasn't just about individual emancipation, it was aimed at nurturing her growing platform, connecting with others, and encouraging their own journeys. What next steps awaited? How could she further elevate her truth and share her evolving journey with even greater influence? The thought of the next move sent shivers of anticipation through her entire being. Would she bristle with resolve and organize a live session where she could converse and confront her wounds head-on? The idea sparked a light, illuminating the uncharted territory of public vulnerability awaiting her. With a rush of exhilaration, Sarah felt the stage of her narrative expand before her, and she was poised to embrace it, however precariously. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her thoughts swirling like leaves caught in an autumn wind. The idea of hosting a live session nagged at her like a persistent itch, challenging her to step beyond the safety of written words and into the uncharted territory of face-to-face interaction. She tapped her fingers on the keys, weighing the potential vulnerability of sharing her journey with a live audience. Could she truly handle the pressure? The prospect came with an intimidating list of uncertainties. What if she stumbled over her words? What if someone challenged her, just as that harsh commenter had? Yet as she pondered these risks, an unwavering thought began to crystallize. This was exactly the moment where her growth could flourish, where she could transform fear into powerful connection. Her desire to connect outweighed her fears, compelling her to take action. She opened another browser tab and began researching platforms for live streaming. As the digital landscape unfolded before her, her heart raced with a rush of adrenaline that signaled the beginnings of an empowering decision. Each click affirmed that she was not alone in this endeavor. Countless others had tread similar paths, melding personal narratives with public engagement. With enthusiasm blooming like spring flowers, she outlined the session in detail. Would it be a Q&A format, or a storytelling event where she could share her own experiences of overcoming adversity? Her thoughts sped ahead as ideas blossomed. What if she invited others, friends, supporters, or even those who had left comments, into the conversation? The thought of camaraderie tugged at her, coaxing her into a space where she and her audience could evolve together. That evening, Sarah settled into her favorite chair, laptop open, and an air of determination surrounding her. She started drafting an invitation that revolved around honesty and mutual growth, incorporating the lessons she had learned along her journey. "Join me for an evening of sharing our stories, from wounds to triumph," she wrote. It felt authentic and urgent, an invitation not just for others, but to herself as well. As the words flowed, a warmth enveloped her. This was not merely about subjecting herself to the vulnerability of a public forum. It was about coalescing around shared experiences that could foster understanding and healing. Sarah's commitment to this process solidified into an exhilarating resolve. She was ready to stand in her truth, knowing that her journey had the potential to inspire those in similar struggles. However, as she prepared to launch her announcement, another pang of doubt crept in. A familiar voice of self-critique emerged. "What if nobody shows up?" it whispered insidiously, attempting to neutralize her burgeoning courage. But rather than retreating, Sarah confronted the fear head-on. What if one person does show up? She recognized that her narrative could resonate with even a single soul, sowing seeds of hope and connection where none existed before. With renewed vigor, she clicked post on her invitation. The live session was set for next week. Sarah felt the weight of both anticipation and fear, but knew this was her responsibility, a chance not only to advocate for herself, but for others navigating their paths of self-discovery. As notifications began buzzing on her phone, likes, shares, messages of support, she took a deep breath. This was her moment of transformation, a tangible step toward embracing her role as a confident force on a public stage. Yet, just as exhilaration danced on the periphery of her thoughts, she noticed a new notification, a private message from an unfamiliar user. "Hope you're ready for the backlash. Not everyone will support you." The pulse quickened in her chest as she clicked on the message. Their words gripped her tightly, reminding her of the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. Would this be yet another chance for growth, or a reinforcement of her insecurities? The stakes had just risen considerably. What would she learn about herself when faced with resistance once again? The days leading to the live session slithered past with an unnerving blend of anticipation and dread. Each morning, Sarah rose with the conviction of purpose, yet every evening was shrouded in introspection. The private message lingered, a shadow that whispered doubts. Was she truly equipped to handle not just the audience, but the potential vitriol from critics? In moments of solitude, her mind played tricks, reenacting scenarios where she was caught off guard, where she stammered under pressure, revealing her insecurities. The imagined laughter of an unseen crowd filled her ears, following every misstep like an ominous echo. Yet beneath that anxiety ran another river, one of resolve brimming with capability. Every time she dismissed the harsh murmurs of self-doubt, she unearthed fragments of strength from her past that reminded her how far she had journeyed. On a particularly turbulent evening, she decided to channel her restlessness into action. Sarah reached out to a few close friends, wanting to share her fears while gathering strength. They met at her favorite cafe, the aroma of coffee swirling around them like the comfort of shared stories. As they settled into a booth, their laughter resonated in harmony with the chatter of the cafe. One by one, they took turns to speak, recounting their own moments of vulnerability, their face-down battles against the odds. Listening to their experiences transformed her fear into tangible energy. With every story shared, she felt more connected, not just to them, but also to herself. They expressed admiration for her courage, solidifying the belief that her voice mattered. "You're not just sharing your story, Sarah. You're becoming a beacon of hope," one friend said, her eyes shining with authenticity. It struck a chord, igniting the ember of her determination once more. That night, when she returned home, she took a moment to journal. Ink flowed onto the pages like her thoughts rushed out, mixing emotions of fear with the thrill of potential. "What if I stumbled?" she wrote. "What if I shone brighter than I expect?" Each entry deepened her understanding that uncertainty was not a foe to vanquish, but a companion in her journey. The day before the session, she set aside time to rehearse. Standing in her living room, looking at her reflection, she practiced articulating her story out loud. Her voice quavered, knees trembling, yet with every articulation, she gained clarity. Her narrative was a constellation of lessons learned, one that could impact even a single person searching for resonance in their struggles. However, the anxiety remained palpably close. A wave of intimidation washed over her as she considered the stark reality of facing a live audience. It felt like staring into a mirror reflecting back not just her image, but also her fears and insecurities. But this mirror was also one of possibility, a chance to transform her journey into a shared experience. As night fell, Sarah nestled into her sheets, wrestling with one final thought. This event could either reinforce her doubts or fortify her resolve. The little voice of fear had quieted for the moment, replaced by an emerging clarity. She would honor every story shared during that session, including her own. The hour approached, and with it a torrent of emotion. She felt both terror and exhilaration surge within her, a duality that sent her heart racing. The moment of truth was looming. Could she turn this energy into something transformative? Could she truly carry the weight of not just her story, but also of those who would potentially join her? As she prepared to press Go Live, she felt a wellspring of incredible determination. Would she rise against her fears and embrace her power? Just as she gathered her breath, a final notification popped up, another message from the unknown user. "Don't forget, you're stepping into a lion's den. Ready yourself." The weight of their words fused with adrenaline coursing through her veins, igniting an urgency she couldn't ignore. The lion's den awaited, but so too did the possibility of rediscovery and triumph. What awaited her on the other side? The moment Sarah pressed Go Live, her heart raced with a mix of vulnerability and excitement. Anxiety fluttered in her stomach, her palms glistening with sweat. But as she gazed into the camera, something shifted within her. This wasn't just about her. It was about sharing the gift of her journey, an opportunity to connect with others fighting similar battles. "Hi everyone, I'm Sarah, and I'm so grateful you're here with me today," she began, her voice slightly shaky but gathering strength. "This is a space for us to share our stories, where we can embrace our vulnerabilities and celebrate our triumphs." The initial wave of discomfort began to dissipate as her words flowed. She shared the essences of her experiences, the stage fright that once gripped her, and the embarrassing silence that haunted her at her sister's wedding. This was the real Sarah, stripped of pretense, confronting her fears head-on. As she talked, the comments began to stream in. Expressions of solidarity and support flooded her screen. "You've got this. Thank you for being so open." Each affirmation bolstered her confidence, weaving a tapestry of connection that vibrated with authenticity. Midway through her narrative, a question surfaced from the audience. How do you cope when negative comments come in? Heart racing, she paused, the once dreaded question transforming into an empowering moment. "That's a great question," she responded, allowing the words to surface organically. "I remind myself that everyone has their struggles hidden behind facades, and I choose to rise above the noise. Vulnerability is my strength." The live session transformed into a conversation, a shared exploration of their truths. For the first time, Sarah felt like a guide, navigating alongside others, flipping the lens from fear to empathy. The ebb and flow of their interactions ignited a community thread that pulsed with life. After discussing various experiences of overcoming adversity, Sarah could feel her heart swell with fulfillment. Through her own metamorphosis, she had created a platform that nurtured collective resilience. When her final words hung in the air, the outpouring of support nearly drowned her in validation. As the stream concluded, she sat back, breathless. Not only had her narrative taken flight, but she had transformed from the hesitant woman who once cowered under judgment into an advocate for authenticity. In embracing vulnerability, she dismantled the walls that had once confined her. Days later, Sarah received an invitation from a local wellness organization, eager to feature her story in an upcoming event focused on empowerment. They had watched her live session and were enthusiastic about her potential as a speaker. With every nerve in her body humming, she read the email. Her heart swelled. This recognition validated her journey, proving she was no longer just the intimidated nurse, but a woman poised to inspire change. Standing on the precipice of opportunity felt exhilarating, illuminating the paths ahead. Sarah's realm expanded, no longer a cramped inner world of self-doubt, but one flourishing with influence and connection. She accepted the invitation, fueled by a newfound confidence. She committed to not just sharing her story, but amplifying others' journeys, creating dialogues that avowed resilience rather than silence. Her first event was a triumph. Standing in front of an engaged audience, she reveled in her achievement. The steady pulse of her heart matched the energy in the room. Her voice resonated with assuredness. She had conquered her fears. The applause that enveloped her felt less like validation from her audience and more like applause from within. With her journey continuing to unfold, Sarah captured her experiences in her blog, now blossoming beyond personal stories into a movement aimed at healing and empowerment. Each entry served as a testament to growth, threading together vulnerability and strength. Sarah stood at the threshold of her desires and ambitions, not just as a speaker, but as a beacon of hope for others. The message was clear. True growth is born from embracing our vulnerabilities. In each moment of authenticity lies the power to ignite change, not only within ourselves, but in those around us. With that realization, Sarah concluded, Not only have I found my voice, but I've also learned the importance of lifting others as I rise. For her, this was merely the beginning of a larger journey, one shaped by courage, strength, and authentic connections. The horizon gleamed with endless possibilities, and Sarah was ready to step boldly forward. And now, for everyone reading, this is your moment too. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you on your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find their path. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Let's keep the conversation going. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support and spread the message of hope and transformation. Don't wait even one more second.